So I have 4 pyramids all joined, and now I'm going to add 3 more that all get added in the same way, and they're going to fit into the spaces basically between the 3s that I've just added. So find that first one, and then I'm going to join between, say, 2 and 3, 3 and 1, 1 and 2, and this is where my work's going to start to become more 3-dimensional. Now as I do this, as I add each pyramid, it's going to zip onto 2 sides now, so it only needs 5 new beads being added, and again these are highlight beads, just 5 of them. But as I do this, I'm going to create these little groups of 4 tightening beads. So you can see hopefully here I've got a tightening bead there, 1 here, and there'll be 1 on my new piece. And every time I make a group of those, I'm going to weave around those nice and tight and bring it really tight together. That adds a lot of structure to the finished piece. Now, there's not necessarily an exact way or time you do that. Do it by feel. I'm going to show you the basic principle of joining these together, but see how you get on. You might want to do it as you go, might want to make sure it's all secured and filled in, and then weave back and do it. Depends how much thread you have. It's completely up to you. But I'm going to get ready to join this one, and again it only needs 5 new beads, and it's the same principle. So I need to weave to come along any edge. Now I can start by zipping, I can start by filling in. I'll fill in 5 beads. After having nearly missed some a minute ago, it's probably good to start filling in and making sure I do those and don't miss them. So 3, 4, and then number 5, that's the same as I need along each side. Then I've got to weave to the next edge, just the same as before, that navigating through, repositioning. Now I'm ready to zip. So again, keep an eye on number 1, and I'm joining, say, these 2 together with the new one, these 2 or these 2, any consecutive 2. And think about where you are. I don't want to join onto here. If I joined onto here and then my next edge is empty, but I've already filled in that edge, so it's not going to join here. So I like to do it so that make sure I join 1 and 2. Just pay attention that you don't fill in and then leave that edge to zip when it's not quite right. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to zip those 5 beads onto my new pyramid. As always, keep it nice and tight, because these tightening beads tie up sort of the spaces where they join, but it doesn't tighten the edges. So you've got to make sure you join those nice and tight as you zip. That's 5. Now I'm ready to navigate to the next edge. Pull it nice and tight. Do that same navigating. You'll see I'll start to have, lots going on in my hands. And I'm gonna zip these, and then I'm actually going to weave back and unite those tightening beads, but whatever works best for you. I could just move part here and then move straight back and do them, but sometimes I get a little muddled, so I prefer to zip these together. So that's the zipping done, but you can see now I have that open space, and you can see there's 4 tightening beads. So there's 1 on each pyramid. That's what I want to join together. So I'm just going to sort of weave back, making sure nothing comes undone as I weave back. I don't accidentally loosen my work. Okay, so I need to weave through my work so that I can easily come out one of those tightening beads, you know, make sure I don't jump across and leave any thread hanging. So I'm going to go up here, and then it's natural that tightening bead is just right next to me. So I'm going to one, I'm going to go into that one, and what you'll see is as I do this, the whole piece will start to tighten right up. So I threaded into number 4, and go back into the first one, and when I pull on those, you'll see it pulls it in a lot tighter. So I want to weave around that as many times as I can, you know, making sure it's all pulled very tight. There we go. Oops, I nearly lost my needle. So you might have to thread into each one individually, you know, once they're nice and tight. Might be a bit too tight of an angle for you to thread through more than one bead at a time. But go around these as many times as you can get round. And if you could see the difference that made as I joined that, and it pulled everything nice and tightly together. Okay, I think they're pretty secure. Now what I need to do is weave my thread away. So I can go into any of the pyramids and weave my thread away. So as I say, it's up to you whether you do your zipping and then weave around those tightening beads, whatever method works for you. As long as you do these, you make sure you fill in the 5 beads that need adding, you zip fully to 2 sides, and then you unite those 4 beads. The exact order doesn't really matter. Okay, it's nice and secure. I haven't caught around anything, I don't think. There we go. So you can see pyramid number 1 with the loop where it sits, and I've got those 3 that sat around number 1, so I can keep an eye on number 1, and I've joined 2 of them together here, and that's then pyramid number 5 in there. So now I've joined 5 pyramids, and I'm going to add pyramids number 6 and number 7 in the same way. So fill in one side, zip 2 sides, and weave around those reinforcing beads. And to make sure I don't join it in the wrong place, just because it's easier to keep track of what you're doing, keep an eye on that number 1, and I'm joining together 2 that meet number 1, 2 that were zipped onto the edges of number 1. So I don't want to accidentally join here, you know, keep an eye on where that number 1 is. And I'm either going to join in between here and here, or here and here. So that number 1, I'm working all the way around it. So I've got my new pyramid. It needs one side filled in. Again, it doesn't matter what order I do this, but just make sure you do it all. So it's 5 beads along this edge. Then move to the next edge, and then I've got to zip 2 edges, and again I've got to make sure I do it the right way so that I don't leave myself trying to zip an edge we're already filled in. So I look for that center one, and I'm not, you know, where am I joining onto? I'm joining to this one and this one. So I'm going to do this one first, because that will give me the edge that I filled in will then sit up there. So just keep an eye on it, make sure you work the right direction. So I've got to come down here, number 1 into place, and again it's, you know, 5 beads that I'm adding, 5 beads that I'm zipping to along the 2 edges. That's bead number 5, zipped into place. Nice and tight. Then I've got to reposition to the next edge. And that's where I'm joining onto. You know, I can have a look at the center one, and again that's my center one, and I'm joining 2 of the 3 that sit around it. So it's this one I'm joining onto. Went through 2 beads there. Oops. My thread is trying to just grab everything together. And as I pull tight, it starts to create the shape that I'm looking for. So that's 1 zipped into place. And then bead number 2 picked up and zipped into place. 3 picked up and zipped into place. And 4 picked up and zipped in. And then 5 picked up and zipped in. And now again I've got that big gap where there's the 4 tightening beads, and I'm going to maneuver my way back to join those together. Once you've got the principle of what you're doing, you can play around with the order in which you do it. So as I'm part way through the zip in, I can join them, but that's up to you. Again, I've got to weave so that I, you know, sort of easily come into that bead. If I jump from there, if I jump from here into that bead, I'll have a little thread showing. So I've got to do a little bit of repositioning to easily get into it, so it's naturally just the next bead along from where I am. So for me, it's come into there, and then I can pop into that bead. So I've got to weave around these 4 tightening beads, and it's all getting very 3-dimensional now, so it's going to get, you know, a bit trickier and trickier as I go along, but comes together really nicely. So I've gone through all 4 and back to the start, and I can start to pull it together now, and you can see that big gap disappears and it completely changes the shape of what I'm making. And those tightening beads are really the key to getting this looking nice and even in those joins and giving you the structure. So I've woven around them a couple of times. I think they're as close as they're ever going to get and nice and secure. And then I just need to weave to any of the pyramids and weave my thread away. Nice and secure. So you can see it's really becoming the 3-dimensional piece that I'm aiming for now, and I have pyramid number 7 is going to go into this space here. So I'm ready now to add pyramid number 7, and I've got to again do those same basic things. Pay attention to where I'm adding it. It doesn't really matter. I can add one here or one here. But if I'm sort of following a logical progression, it might help you keep track and do it, you know, the same way that I'm doing it. And it's going to use 5 new beads. So I'm going to fill in 5 beads, zip it then to 5 beads each on 2 other pyramids, and then unite those 4 beads together. So I've got my pyramid. I'm going to fill in those 5 beads, and then I've got to reposition and zip. And again, when I do the zipping, I've got to make sure I think about what I'm doing. So you might prefer to zip the 2 sides first and then fill in, absolutely up to you. So the 5 beads are filled in, got to reposition to come on the next edge. Again, I'm looking for number 1, then there's pyramids joined to it, and it's the space there that I'm filling in. So let me make sure I think about where I'm zipping this one to. I'm going to zip this one to here. This one first, and then this one. So there's 2 edges. So I've got an edge here that needs zipping, edge here that needs zipping. That edge there has been filled in. So I've just got to think about where am I zipping it to. So always just take a second. It's just annoying to have to undo it. And this is really getting a 3-dimensional shape now, so it's getting a bit fiddlier and fiddlier. And we've got all these pyramids that your threads want to catch onto, but we're nearly there. This is pyramid number 7, so there's just 1 left to add after this. Okay, that's a 5 zipped along that edge there. Pull it tight. See, that needs adjusting so it's nice and tight. Then I've got to navigate to this edge so that it can zip here. I'm working up, just zipping this edge here. Nice and zipped. But again, I've got those 4 tightening beads that need uniting, so you can see the big gap, but you can see the other gaps, how that they've really pulled in from this uniting. So I'm just going to weave to get to exit those. Okay, now I can thread into one of them, and again start to pull them tight, so it's a bit fiddly pulling them tight the first time because they're also loose and a bit fiddly threading into them all, but they soon come together nicely. There we go. So you really see the shape I'm making now. Okay, they're nice and secure. So I can weave this thread away. Secure. I can get rid of that. So I have 7 pyramids joined, and you can see a triangle shape left, and that's directly opposite that number 1 with the loop, and that's where number 8 is going to go. Now it's time for pyramid number 8 to go in, and this doesn't need any new beads. It's going to zip to the 3 edges here. So the last 3 pyramids that I put in there, 5, 6 and 7, it's going to zip to one edge of each of those, and then it needs all 4 of those tightening beads united in the 3 different spots. So there's just lots of weaving around, so no new beads. I've left a couple of threads on this one just so that I've got extra threads in case I need to, you know, because I have got lots of extra weaving around to do. But I wove, you know, this one, so it's not quite in my way. So I'm ready to do this now. So I'm coming up part way along here, so I've got to make sure I join it to the right spot. I can see I've got 2 spaces here, so I'm looking for 2 beads along there to join it onto. So no filling in, but make sure everything's in the right place. Now I've got lots of pyramids for my threads to try and grab hold of, so really keep an eye on that. So I've started part way along a side, so I'll have to make sure I come all the way back. Now I'm repositioning to the next side. And I've got to zip onto the 5 beads on this pyramid. So that's bead number 1 zipped into place. So this is a trickier one because there's lots of zipping, but it's a really 3-dimensional piece I'm working on now, so I want to make sure I pull everything nice and tight. I can, because I will be weaving back around and doing those tightening beads in a minute. If any of it is a bit loose, I can, you know, play around with that, but I want to try and get it as tight as I can because it is a bit fiddly to do it. Oops, I pulled my needle straight off my thread. I've zipped all 5 there, and again I've got to reposition. So sometimes when I'm doing these, I do weave around those 4 beads to unite them, so I'm going to show you how I would do that. So I'm sort of in position to get into one of those 4 beads, so one of those tightening beads, so I've threaded into it. But you can see I haven't zipped here, whereas previously I was uniting these at the end, but this one I'm going to unite them right when I'm in sort of a good spot to do it, just so you can see both ways. There we go, so I've united those 4. And then what I can do is figure out where I was for zipping. That's going to be the main challenge. Where was I? Where do I need to be? So I'm going to go into here, into here. So to make sure I get back to where I want to be. Let me get back on track now, back zipping along here. Now I've only got a couple of beads left to zip along that first edge, but again I could decide, oh, I'm going to actually unite those 4 beads as I come along here. So I'll do that this time again. So I'm in the right spot to thread into one of those tightening beads, and then I can thread around all 4 of them. So you can see I'm just doing the basic principle of zipping and filling where I need to, obviously no filling on this one, and then uniting them, but the order isn't necessarily exact. All I'm trying to do is make sure I do all of them, I don't leave any threads hanging anywhere. There we go, so I've brought those in nice and tight. I'll just weave around again, and then again I've got to reposition to get back because I still have got some zipping to do here. I can just sort of see it's not quite zipped all the way there because I started part way along a side. Now as I'm doing this, obviously I'm squishing everything in a little bit so it can all be adjusted at the end. It's the nature of a bit of three-dimensional work and lots of fiddly places to weave. Okay, so now I'm back on that first edge. I'm going to try and find those beads hidden in there that I haven't zipped to yet. There we go. So that's all zipped, but I didn't join those 4 beads, so I'm going to work my way up to doing those. And I think just this thread is going to be enough thread for me. I left the other thread on there in case I needed it, but I don't think I do. I made sure it was nice and secure, so I can just chop the other thread off, which is good. Okay, just these 4 tightening beads to weave around. Okay, they're nice and woven around, nice and secure, and now I can get rid of this thread. So I need to weave it away to secure it, so I'm going to weave into a pyramid. Oh, my needle came off my thread again, but I just want to make sure that's fully secure, so I'm going to do a bit more. Oops, it's come off again. It thinks it's done. Okay, so I can trim that. Like I say, I left another thread on there, but I made sure it was woven so that if needed I can chop it, so I can chop it. There we go. That's all my threads taken off. I can just adjust my piece where I've squished it in anywhere. And these can be sort of puffy, so if I want to I can put my awl in and press them out, or I can press them inwards, whichever way I prefer. But that's all 8 of my pyramids joined, all 24 of my triangles joined, and I have my little Pytetra. So this is my pendant or ornament all finished.